In this videocast, Michael Hamelin, Chief Security Architect of Tufin Technologies, a company which focuses on the correct configuration and management of firewalls, will discuss the issues of black and white listing.
Blacklisting gets into the standard of how do I block everything that's bad, right?
Or every site that's bad.
Every site that's bad. It's an impossible task unless you have a crystal ball, in which case you've got a really good job in IT, right? Whitelisting is where most organizations have decided you have to go now. Instead of passing traffic at bulk, critical servers that are passing, I worked in a finance and privacy organization before, and we found that all of the critical applications, rather than just allowing the internet in and putting blacklisting for sites we thought were criminal organizations or sites that were attacking it, we went to the opposite role, deny everything to those servers, and each customer has to come in and be vetted into a whitelist for the most critical services. I think the whitelisting, while more work to set up the first time, is less work to maintain.
Yeah, but don't you get, in large enterprises, if you say whitelisting is the way to go, you've got hundreds of users constantly phoning you up saying, oh, I use this site, why can't I get to it? And then the next day they're trying to get onto other sites, which perhaps they've Googled, to get some information. They're doing, say I work in a large hospital and I'm doing some medical research.
Yeah, I think that's a little different. So that's outbound, right? So if you think about what users are doing outbound, I really don't know if there's a great answer there. I know there's some products out here that are doing automatic whitelisting. Some of the vendors are starting to use some of the vulnerability techniques to actually analyze websites on the fly to determine if they can be whitelisted or blacklisted based on essentially doing a vulnerability analysis of the data flow. So is this site a site that looks like it's doing malicious activity? Should I block users from going to it? And doing blacklisting, whitelisting. We don't do a lot of that with Tufin. We don't integrate a lot with the outbound. Most people don't do that on the firewall anymore. They are farming that off to the web senses, all the other companies doing URL filtering today.
Sure. So essentially, we're talking about inbound traffic here.
Yeah, I think most firewalls today are focused much more on what's inbound and cross-zone. So more firewalls are being deployed deeper in the organization between segments. As we flattened out the network in the last 5 years, everybody connected everything to the internet. We've realized that probably wasn't a good idea. We now see massive data breaches where data that should have never been available on the internet got there. So more companies are segregating internal firewalls to control what moves between groups of servers, groups of users, and the groups of servers.
And that's a management challenge in itself.
It is.
Yes. And okay. So before we end this video cast, can you give our watchers three crucial tips that maybe they're not the basic ones that they read about all the time?
Right. Sure. I think the first thing to focus on firewall design and firewall policy is organizing around groups of risk has been the standard. One thing that I've recommended people also look at is organizing their firewall based on SLAs. Every organization has layers of devices that each have different SLAs. When they get mixed up in one environment, every firewall becomes critical. If you separate those, then you get your real business-critical firewalls protecting the business-critical assets. And outbound web surfing normally isn't as much of a business-critical. We like to think it's important. We need to surf the web. We need to go, but it's not the same thing as your server running your e-commerce or your revenue-generating transactions, right? The second is in designing firewall rule bases. Technically, when we design firewall rule bases, often we get caught up in trying to design them to look like services that we offered our customers. We design them around business units, when really they need to be designed around performance and designed around the firewalls or the way the firewall processes packets. And I guess tip number 3, trust nothing. The new model in the network, many organizations decided to allow users to start buying their own PCs, run their own PCs, so the whole network becomes untrusted. So if you think about trusting nothing in how you design a network, you end up with a better stance and you end up with more policy enforcement points. Maybe they're not all firewalls, but different places to enforce policy and organizational structure.
Michael, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ben.